When Moses Caicedo was first in negotiations with the Premier League, it was Man United. I was saying, look, you got to buy this fella. This is the real deal. And I remember kind of the comments section was full of, like, how can he be? How can he? It's only costing 6 million. How can he be any good? Well, the reason is where he was coming from. If he was Brazilian, the price would have been much, much higher. But he was coming out of Ecuador, a much less traditional football country. And so you could get him for an absolute song. In fact, I saw a Chelsea fan the other day saying we should have paid Brighton even more for him, given the level of his performances this year. He was coming out of a very, very interesting club, a club called Independiente del Valle. Now, if you look at the Ecuador team, that defensive unit, they conceded one goal in the last 11 rounds of World Cup qualification. And that defensive unit is marshalled there by William Pacho, the Colossus at Paris Saint-Germain. Alongside him, there's Piero Hincapié, who's just joined Arsenal. I'm not quite sure why they needed another left-sided defender, but terrific service at Bayer Leverkusen. And there's the youngster Joel Ordóñez, who's in Belgium. A little bit of a surprise to me that he didn't move to the Premier League in the last window, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if he does in the next. Now, all three of those, like Moses Caicedo, are products of this club, of Independiente del Valle. I'm recording this the day after quite a turgid 0-0 draw between Canada and Ecuador. And of the 17 players who took the field there for Ecuador during the course of the game, one is still playing for Independiente del Valle. 8, including 6 of the first team, were produced by the club. And there's one more who played there for a while as well. This is extraordinary. It's a small club on the outskirts of Quito, which was taken over almost 20 years ago now as an investment project, as a project to develop and sell on young players. And their youth development work is sensational. They've even got colleges and so on to develop their products. And they are producing players for the world, including a kind of South American Phil Foden, 18-year-old Kendry Páez, who Chelsea have bought. He's on loan at Strasbourg at the moment, but he was scoring goals in World Cup qualification at the age of 16. The idea behind this club then is to produce and sell. They weren't really about winning titles, but to their own surprise, they've been winning them. They've won the Ecuadorian League. They're on course to win it again this time. They've won international titles, the Europa League, the equivalent, the Copa Sudamericana. But that's an extra. What they exist to do is produce and sell players, and they do it with extraordinary skill. They bring in top-class coaches. They've got wonderful facilities. It's a serious project which is bringing them serious returns. Now, you can see they're providing 10 players there to one team. You can see that this little club, Independiente del Valle, have made a fantastic contribution to Ecuador qualifying for their 5th World Cup. All of them this century. But this all started, this rise of Ecuadorian football started before Independiente del Valle became this investment project. And I was there in the stadium when they qualified for their first World Cup, the end of 2001. What a party that was. And in 2006, they got out of their group and gave England a game in the second round. That's their best World Cup so far. And that's before this investment project. So I think we can see Independiente del Valle as both a cause of the rise of Ecuadorian football and as a consequence of the rise of Ecuadorian football, which has been very, very impressive indeed. My first report, first time I was ever on the BBC, it was summer of 1997. I was on World Service Radio, and it was a little report that's saying that, well, Ecuador probably wouldn't make France 98, but look out for them in the long term. Now, if only more of my predictions were more on point, I'd be speaking to you today from my own Caribbean island. But that one proved spot on. and we've been beginning to see the progress since 1989, since the Copa America of 1989. Before that, prior to that, they're basically a South American Luxembourg. I mean, if you look at their record in the Copa America up to 1989, it's like something from the Chamber of Horrors. But after that, you begin to see a dramatic increase, and the people behind Independiente del Valle have clearly got in there because they were seeing this rise, and they were seeing that there was raw potential there, and that Ecuadorian football was moving in a healthy direction. And if they gave a little bit more movement to that dynamic, it could be a good project for them. So where has this come from? And if you look at South American club competitions over recent years, Ecuador is the big success story. You know, Brazil are absolutely dominating the Libertadores. Argentina get a slice here and there. Ecuador have become the third force at club level. It's extraordinary, really is. It's extraordinary. Barcelona of Guayaquil, that's at sea level. That's not the altitude of Quito. Over the last few years, they've reached the semi-finals of the Libertadores twice. Now, outside Brazil and Argentina, and once a club from Uruguay, no one else has done that. No other countries have done that. Only Ecuador. Liga de Quito, or LDU, they're the only Ecuadorian club to have won the Libertadores. They did it in 2008. But they've been consistently excellent since as well. They won the Sudamericana, the Europa League equivalent, a couple of years ago. They came very, very close to reaching this year's Libertadores final. So Ecuadorian football is clearly punching well above its weight in a way that you think, well, how can this be happening? And Ecuador, it's not certainly not a rich country. Population of around, say, 18 million. And a population of Colombia, 52, 53 million. Colombia has more people than anyone else in South America, barring Brazil. Colombia, football crazy country, lots of urban centres. How on earth can Ecuador be outperforming Colombia? It is an extraordinary story, I think. One of the reasons might be a kind of business model, because both these clubs that I mentioned, Barcelona and Liga de Quito, LDU, both got their own stadiums built in the 1990s. Barcelona's is very big. It's a huge stadium. The one of Liga, the Casablanca, the White House. I wonder what colour shirts they wear. That's a little bit small, little bit more compact, but it's very, very impressive. Really impressive. And you can clearly see that after the construction of these stadiums, it's lifted these clubs up into another level. Part of that, I think, is comparative advantage. And if you look at on that part of the world in general, and pointedly Colombia, almost all the stadiums are municipally owned. But in this case, these clubs own their own stadiums. And I think that's been part of a business model which has helped ensure that they are competitive on a continental level, punching well above their weight. But there's another thing, I think, with the rise of Ecuadorian football, and that is just look down the team, look down the lineup as they're standing there for the national anthem. It's very, very black team, very, very Afro-descendant team. Now, this is relatively new, and the Afro-descendant percentage of the Ecuadorian population is really not big, and estimates vary between 5 and 10% of the population. They're producing much, much, much more than 50% of the players for the national team. And that's Afro-descendant population, descendants obviously of enslaved sub-Saharan Africans, and relatively limited to a couple of places in Ecuador. There are a couple of places that are producing lots and lots and lots of footballers. Now, obviously, there is a worrying aspect to this. It does lead to a stereotyping of a vulnerable, economically disadvantaged sector of the population. But it does mean opportunities for those who are able to make it. And clearly one factor in this rise, an important factor, I think, in this rise of Ecuadorian football, is the number of Afro descendants who are coming through. Because certainly, in comparison with the mass of the Ecuadorian population, they are physically very, very imposing, and that's one thing I think which has made it so easy for the likes of Moses Caicedo and William Pacho to adapt and thrive in European club football. Physically imposing, well developed technically, especially by this club, Independiente del Valle, and Ecuador, an extraordinary rising force over recent decades in South American football. Speak to you next time.